Hey Talk Shop fans, I have a very exciting announcement. Join me and Fenimore Lane at the Mayflower Inn and Spa in Washington, Connecticut for a celebration of design on Saturday, May 18th. Journey to the countryside to shop our all-day design bazaar with 2 tents and over 30 amazing vendors in the home, fashion, and lifestyle space. Or take part in our design summit with one-of-a-kind panels and speakers, including Talk Shop Season 2 guest Annie Meyers-Shyer of This Oak House, in conversation with me and Farrow & Ball's color expert. Feel free to bring the kids and come hungry. Danry has children's activities covered, and Lee Jofa will be hosting a beautiful picnic by the pond. It's sure to be magical, and there's no time to wait. We already sold out of our all-day passes, so to learn more and pick up your tickets, visit the link in the show notes or via my Instagram bio. I hope to see you all there.
So there's such a comfort when someone is so well-versed in something.
I mean, what a delight also to be able to get that in-person experience of him walking through the house and drawing and showing you, because it's really, that itself is an education too.
I've learned so much. I know so much more. I didn't know in my mid-40s I would just be in the middle of a major education, which I am.
Welcome to Talk Shop. I'm Ariel Okin, a New York-based interior designer, writer, and editor, looking to bring a little bit of magic into our homes every day. After years as a writer and editor in the interiors world, I founded my own editorial site, Fenimore Lane, in 2020, and the Talk Shop interview series was born. Each week, I delve into the personal experiences of the top interior designers and tastemakers around the globe. This week, we're welcoming an admirer of design with a different perspective, the client side. Annie Meyers-Shyer has meticulously been documenting the renovation of her family's historic home in sunny Los Angeles on her Instagram account, This Oak House, and it's quickly become a fan favorite, amassing tens of thousands of followers in a matter of weeks. Originally from LA, Annie comes from a life grown up in Hollywood, thanks to her filmmaking parents, the iconic writer, director, and producer Nancy Meyers, and her father, also writer, director, and producer Charles Sheyer. Annie's love for design and fashion has followed her from a young age, as a fresh out of college editor at Harper's Bazaar to working on the PR team at Chanel, and has most recently landed her in the form of a modern-day design oracle. We sat down with Annie to chat all things interiors, home inspiration, renovation musts and don'ts, and more. Please join me as we welcome Annie to the podcast. Annie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This is the episode that I'm most excited about.
Oh my God, you're so sweet. Thank you for having me. I've never done a podcast before, so this is so fun for me. I love podcasts and I love your podcast.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you, and all of us in the office have been talking about how we literally can't wait to do this one. So I'm so happy that you're on. So to kick off the conversation, can you describe your style in 3 words or less?
I would say timeless. Well, this is what I'm after. This is what I'm trying for. I don't know if I'm going to accomplish it, but okay. I would say timeless, warm, and unfussy.
I think that's 100% accurate.
That's what I'm after.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
I feel like that's just like the goal in life, those 3 words.
You know, when I look at interiors from the past, the ones that still resonate for me are the ones that feel timeless. You know, I try to really stay away from trends. It's hard sometimes, you know?
Yeah, it is hard.
Yeah.
When you go back, and we talk about this a lot with everyone who comes on, when you go back and look at reference images, the ones that stick are the ones that stick for a reason. You're not getting sucked into like, you know, whatever's on Instagram that day is really hard. But I feel like when you have a really distinct point of view and aesthetic, which you do, it's like almost easier to distill out the noise.
Yes, I totally agree.
So for those who may not know, which I think is absolutely 0 people who listen to my podcast, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are at this point in your life right now?
At this moment in life, I'm in my house, current house, which I live in, and I am renovating a house here in Los Angeles. At this point in life, I would say sort of the headline of my life is I'm a mom/renovator. Slash like roofer, plumber. I'm all the things.
I mean, same. I should just add that to my Instagram bio. I'm a mom/renovator.
But I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. I loved growing up here. I lived on the East Coast for quite a while. I worked in fashion, which was really fun and in a lot of ways really similar to interiors. And I moved back to LA in 2009-ish. And I worked in fashion here, in fashion PR. for Chanel, which was an amazing experience. And then after working there for over 5 years, I left and I've been sort of a full-time mom ever since then. And we have been looking to move for years. And we're given this incredible opportunity where my husband's mother moved to Montecito at the beginning of the pandemic. And she had an amazing house here in LA that's historical home, and she didn't want to sell it. And we decided through a lot of discussion that we would take it over. So it's been a really incredible journey.
I mean, just the fact that it was her house, I feel like is so special and so rare.
It is. Well, one of the good things about it is that my husband did not grow up there. So he
Yeah.
wasn't like hugely sentimentally attached to things, but we both have such a respect for the house and we had such great memories of being in the house. We've had Thanksgivings there. I mean, it's a home that means a lot to us.
That's so special.
Yeah. And the house has a lot of character. You know, homes in LA, one of the interesting things is you'll drive down the street, it's a Spanish style house and then a shingle house. And then
Yeah.
you've got everything here.
It really is such a mishmash. I'm always struck by that whenever I'm in LA. Like it runs the gamut and it could all be on one street. Like you could have like a Nutra house and
You
like
can.
a Mediterranean house and they're all kind of like next to each other.
It's true. And I'm struck on the other side. So one of my best friends lives in Connecticut and I'll go to Greenwich. I'm like, oh my God, this is wild. Every house is some version of the same, but they do it so well and it's so gorgeous.
They do. And it's like a movie. I mean, Greenwich really especially is kind of like a movie set. It's so pretty.
I know. When I came home from Greenwich, I told my husband we have to move to Greenwich.
I would be so happy to have you as my
goodness.
neighbor.
It's so beautiful. But, this house is a cold court house and it had a real point of view and it had real character. And so I had to figure out how to sort of meld my aesthetic and make sure that I was doing right by the house. And so that's been the leading force through the whole thing is like, what is right for the house? What does the house dictate? And sort of figuring our way through that and navigating that. So I'm mid renovation and that's kind of where I am in life. That is the headline of my life, being a renovator.
I'm mid renovation.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite thing about following along is you are so open and unfiltered with how you share what you're working on. And the account has really evolved into not just home, like you share recommendations for everything, honestly. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Like, I feel like you were private on Instagram the whole time before you launched the account. And like, what sort of drove the idea behind it? How did you kind of get the idea to start sharing it more publicly? And how do you think your past experiences working in fashion kind of like intertwine into what you're doing now?
First of all, I started the account because I did live in New York for a long time. So I have a lot of friends on the East Coast. And I started it really, I was inspired by a friend who did something similar where I thought it would be fun to document the process for my friends, really.
Yeah.
I had no intention of it being anything more than the 100 or so friends that would be interested in helping me pick paint colors. So that's the truth. I didn't really see, there's been no roadmap for this. So it started because I thought it would be a fun thing to do. The other part of that is as I dove deep into the world of interiors, I discovered that there was a lot of gatekeeping, which we don't have in fashion. And the fashion I worked in magazines. So I was at Harper's Bazaar and everything is credited. Like you can look at anything from the necklace to the blush to the shoes and everything is credited.
So true.
And there's just a lot of gatekeeping. And even in social media fashion, right? Like people are constantly tagging their clothes and giving you links and you can really find whatever you are looking for through in fashion in social media. And with interiors, that wasn't happening. So I would DM someone and say, hi, I love that rug. Would you mind sharing the source? And I would just get ghosted.
I know that's how it goes because like the trade industry is so protective of their sources for so many different reasons. And as a consumer, when you're doing it yourself, or, even if you are working with a designer, it can be so frustrating because you're like kind of bumbling around looking to find what that is, but no one will tell you.
Nobody will tell you. And then you go to a showroom and they won't let you pull a sample. I mean, it's a tricky thing.
Totally. Antiquated.
Yeah, it is antiquated. Also, there's so much great stuff for everyone, right? And if you have a beautiful home and you have, a beautiful piece in there and you share that, it's going to look different in somebody else's home, right? So feels like there's enough for everyone. I will also say that a lot of people hire a designer for their trade discounts or their trade information and all of that that comes with having a designer. And I respect designers who don't share. I get it. They're being paid. They have to respect their client. Maybe their client doesn't want to share. So I totally respect every way to do it. I personally really did want to share it all because, I'm learning so much.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like it does everybody a service when we kind of are transparent about what we're doing in our homes. And, you posted about your roofing recently. Like,
yeah. And if I've done the research to find like the perfect color white grout to go with subway tile, like I'm saving somebody else time.
right. I remember that was how we initially connected because we were DMing about pool slate.
Yes, exactly.
And first of all, that sparks conversation and connection between people when you don't ghost someone and you do respond.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to come from that.
I totally agree. And I think that information helps people and it saves people time. And those are the things that I screenshot, when someone gives a great tip or helpful information. And so if I'm in a brand new world, this is all new for me. And so if I can help somebody or share something, I'm all for it.
I agree. I feel that way that's what we try to do with Fenimore Lane is share sources, share, information about us from the trade side about how designers started their business and why they pivoted. On the topic of careers, before we dive more into the house, I would love to chat with you about your time at Harper's Bazaar and Chanel and fashion, because something that I found with the season 1 guests that we've had is there is a through line, especially like we interviewed Madeline Luckel, who's the senior home editor at Architectural Digest, and she came from Vogue.
Mm-hmm.
So there really is a through line between fashion and design. And I'm wondering, were you always interested in fashion and design together, or was it first fashion and then did it extend to interiors later in life?
Well, I definitely think they're both under the same umbrella to some extent, right? Because it's all about having a discerning eye in some way. So for me, I was really interested in magazines and fashion magazines specifically. So I started my career in fashion working for Hal Rubenstein at In Style magazine. And he did the red carpet recap. And at the time when I worked there, we were researching who did this person wear on the red carpet. And then the way you would find out is like InStyle would come a month later and you'd have to see who was wearing Giorgio Armani. And it was this really fun time.
Wild.
And when I went to Harper's Bazaar, I was an editor there and it was like Devil Wears Prada days. It was fashion closet and big budget shoots. And it was a great job to be 24 in New York City.
It's like the dream fashion job when you're right out.
Yeah, it was great. And I was traveled and I went to the shows in Milan and being an editor was a great job for me. I felt like it was something I was good at and I enjoyed it.
Well, you have a discerning eye. And I feel like that's like the number one thing you need to be able to edit. And I think that it can serve you in so many different ways.
Yeah, I definitely think I have more of a discerning eye than a creative bone in my body. I would say that's definitely, I can pick from things and I really enjoyed being an editor. I loved working in fashion. I loved working at Harper's Bazaar. It was a great job. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, the PR side never really appealed to me necessarily. And that's what I did at Chanel. I was in-house PR.
And I was interning there when you were working.
That's so crazy.
Which we recently discovered, but I was interning in New York. It was right after I graduated college and was going into grad school.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things about PR is that in theory, the idea is that you're pushing a brand, right? You're trying to always sell this brand. And I felt at the time that if there was a brand that I could really feel like I could stand behind and believe, of course it would be Chanel, right? I got to work there under Karl Lagerfeld and go to the shows in Paris. And I would stand at those shows and look at the big production and be like, I cannot believe I'm here. I cannot believe anybody wants me for this job.
Yeah.
And it was a great time. I loved working in PR. There was a lot of travel. We did a lot of shows a year. We'd have to travel to the locations. And as a new mom, it was really challenging for me.
That's really hard.
I remember when I was pumping with my second son and I got an itinerary emailed to me for a trip to Cuba.
No.
And I thought to myself, like, I don't know if I can leave this kid.
No. And that's like before the era of like when you're hooked up to the wall on a Spectra before like Willow existed.
Yes, totally. That spectrum.
It's really hard.
It's really hard. And I started to feel with that job, this would be better suited for somebody younger than me.
Yeah.
I just couldn't give the job what it deserved anymore. But I loved working at Chanel. I loved the people I work with. I'm still in contact with a lot of them. And it was a great job.
Like that period of life shift is a time that I feel like women don't talk enough about. And I found moving to the suburbs and making mom friends who were former prosecutors or in
Yeah.
house counsel. And then now they're a full time mom and it's fulfilling in a different way. And I feel like it's like a life phase that isn't talked about enough.
I felt when I left my job, I was really happy. I had two really young kids who I was taking to music classes, and it felt lovely to be. And I had I was really lucky to be able to leave that job. I know a lot of people
Yeah.
aren't able to do that, but I felt a relief from the travel. Now, by the way, if someone told me I could get on a plane right now by myself for 12 hours, I would jump at it.
Different story and different phase of life.
I'm in a different time. Yeah, I had really
Yep.
little babies who I couldn't explain why I was leaving, and it became really challenging for me. But
Yeah, it's such a cliche and everyone says it, but you blink and like they're 9 and then they're 15 and it just goes so fast.
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So when in that period of life did the home bug kind of hit you? Was it before you bought this oak house or was it like kind of during the process?
So, what during the process of talking to my mother-in-law about us taking over the home, I really had to do a deep dive. That's like my nature, is to do deep dives.
Yeah.
And so I did a deep dive into home decor. How can the house is filled with, like I was saying, a real distinct character. So I bought a lot of books and I did a lot of research, and I wanted to figure out the layout of the house was suited perfectly for my mother-in-law, who was a single woman, and it was not the right layout for a family of 4.
Right.
So, there was one bedroom that you had to go through the primary bedroom to get to.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
So we had to really undo some of that work. And so that was the impetus for the construction, was how do we make this a house that is a kitchen that will suit our family, and then that, we all can have bedrooms that access the hallway equally.
And that's like a puzzle.
Oh, it was such a puzzle. I mean, I have an amazing team who helped me figure it out.
Yeah, and let's talk about who you're working with also, because
Yes.
you're working with Mike Moser, who's so talented.
He's the best. Not only is he talented, he's also like the greatest guy. So it's just an amazing combo. And every time we have a meeting, I'm like, I don't want it to end. It's such, well, his stuff, also the furniture, that's really like the good, juicy stuff. That's better than like, this room needs a footing.
Right. And the millwork is fun too. I mean, doing the millwork plans are really fun and picking, that type of stuff. And who's the architect you're working with?
So I'm working with a man named Brian Covington, who was at Ferguson and Shamamian for over 2 decades.
Wow.
And he was their West Coast guy for sort of the latter part of his time there. So they would send him out to do a lot of projects in LA, and he was here all the time. So he had gotten a place here. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, I think he just relocated here full time. So he's not with FSA anymore.
Yeah.
But that's where he worked. And so he brought such an incredible amount of knowledge to the project. But because he was New York based, I had to pair him up with an LA local architect. So we also worked with a woman named Karen Putman, who worked with Brian in conjunction. And Brian did all my interior architecture.
I mean, I love seeing your like millwork elevations and stuff that you post because it's just stunning. I mean, it's so classic. We had Gil Schaefer on recently.
Lucky duck.
I know. I was so nervous to talk to Gil because I absolutely adore everything.
Isn't he the nicest?
The nicest person on the planet and
know.
such a delight to talk to and so knowledgeable and so talented and so accomplished and humble.
Yeah.
And we were talking about his time at FSA, and it's really, it's so interesting to me how much of a training ground, almost like an incubator it is there for people who are just so immensely talented.
Yes, Brian is immensely talented. And also there's such a comfort when someone is so well versed in something, like I don't have to second guess or check, or it's a wonderful thing. We had a meeting yesterday and he was drawing on our walls and explaining how the chair rail will meet the siding. I mean, it was just it's just great to see it all come together in his vision, and he's wonderful. It's been great working with him.
I mean, what a delight also to be able to get that in-person experience of him walking through the house and drawing and showing you, because it's really, that itself is an education too.
I've learned so much. I've learned so much. I know so much more. I didn't know in my mid 40s I would just be in the middle of a major education, which I am.
Is there anything that really surprised you about from the house that you just were totally unexpected, or something that you learned that you were like, that's really cool that I didn't know that before?
Well, there were like the unexpected, not good things, which is,
Right. Which happens in every
yeah.
construction project, unfortunately.
Yeah. So that's been challenging, working through some of that. Because I have never done this before, unfortunately, there was a learning curve. For example, we didn't have our interior elevation set finalized when we got our contractor. So, or our bid was based off of an incomplete set.
Yeah.
I sort of was like, take what you see in the kitchen and imagine, this amount of millwork in the laundry room. I didn't know, right? And so what ended up happening was when I told our contractor that this room, whatever, the boys' bathroom has beadboard, he put in budget for beadboard that's a stock size. And then we get the plans and it's a 3.5-inch beadboard, which is something that has to have a knife made. And that's got to cost. Yes. And so every single crown molding and millwork and everything is custom, every single piece. And I didn't know that. I wouldn't have known that. And
that's what makes those projects that you see, like, in Gil's books and at FSA, like, that's what makes them so incredibly special and memorable.
I keep telling myself that.
It's true.
It's true. No, I know.
It's a gigantic investment because the millwork, it's all custom. It's all kind of done by hand, really.
Yeah, there was a lot of millwork there. And so we've copied a lot of those profiles and tried to recreate them in other rooms. And
I love that.
And so there's a lot that the house dictated. But yeah, it's all custom. So that's something that's been a challenge, is not having a full set. That would be like my biggest piece of advice to somebody, is make sure you have it completely as full as possible before you start to get your bids.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that we have started to incorporate. We only start purchasing when we've got the entire FF&E budget completely solidified. So every FF&E decision, every construction decision, like, it all has to be approved and like ready to go. And then we start purchasing, because there is so much that can change. And we want to be really respectful of, the numbers that were discussed. And so that's been like a really big learning for us, that kind of during COVID, we decided to pivot to that.
It's really smart. We've done something very similar. Mike and his team are very conscious of budget. They've been wonderful in that way.
You've really done your homework, because you speak the vernacular. Like, I feel like you could become an interior designer after this process.
I don't know if I could ever do this again, but maybe. I
kind of have to become immune to the ups and downs and peaks and valleys of it. Otherwise, you'll have a nervous breakdown.
Yeah. I also think if I wasn't doing it for me, I'd be less invested in some way. I think it would be easier.
Yeah. I think the most fulfilling part of it as the designer is like the end piece, but it's also like the relationships you make with everyone along the way. And like watching the clients. This is something I talked about with Gil too, is like the story of the people that are living in the house. It's like about them. And so I think that's also why people love kind of tuning into your Instagram. It's like you're getting like kind of the behind the scenes story of how this process happens and why. And it's really interesting to see the decisions that you make for the boys' rooms and your room and why it all comes together, because it actually, these houses tell the story of like who we are, where we are at this point in our lives, and how we want to grow into our homes.
For sure. And I think it's important to be really honest with yourself and then also your team on sort of what level of involvement you want, right? Like my GC knows that we talk about everything. Yeah. I mean, what is the edge metal on the roof was a big conversation. I don't enjoy coming into a room and saying, well, what's that? Or what's this? Yeah. It's learned.
Right? Well, you really do your homework. I mean, that's why I love the account so much, because it's really knowledgeable. One thing I've noticed with what you've been sharing from your house, it's got a mix of East Coast and LA together almost.
Yes.
And I know you spent time in both places. What drew you to leave LA, head to the East Coast for school, stay there for a little bit, and then come back? And then did you bring some inspiration from East Coast looking projects to your team when you were dreaming up what the house would look like?
Well, I went to school on the East Coast because I think, especially from California, there was there was a piece of me that knew I was coming back
Yeah.
to Los Angeles. And so I wanted to experience something different. And once I was on the East Coast, so many of my friends at college were from New York, and it felt like the natural thing to move to New York and live in Murray Hill and get a job and like the whole thing.
Exactly
Like
what I
I
did.
was, yeah, I was all in. Like I was, I was all in and I did it. And I loved living in New York and I truly thought I would live there forever. My family spent some time in the Hamptons. I loved the lifestyle. I loved being in the city. I loved being out east. I absolutely loved it. And then I was getting to a point at my job at Harper's Bazaar where I just felt like I was ready for a change. And that coincided with me being in a relationship, and that person was moving to Los Angeles. And I followed him more or less to Los Angeles. And then, as fate would have it, he, of course, broke up with me.
Oh my God.
And
I thought
then,
you were going to say you proposed. That's amazing.
no, the opposite, very much whatever
That's
the
so
absolute
funny.
opposite is of
That's
that.
amazing.
And so then I was in LA and
But it's like a blessing because you ended up coming home and your family's there.
yeah,
And we haven't even
exactly.
talked about this, but for those who, I mean, there's literally no one on earth who doesn't know this, but Annie's mother is the widely celebrated, highly acclaimed, incredible on all fronts Nancy Meyers. And her sister is all the things that I just said. Amazing writer, director, producer, Hallie. So,
Yes.
I mean, you come from a very incredible line of intelligent and strong women who
I
have a
do.
very excellent sense of style and taste.
For sure. And my mother's mother was an interior decorator.
I
So,
didn't know that.
yeah. Yeah.
I know your mom is from the main line,
I know.
which I am also.
Yeah. So there's definitely a long line of wonderful women in my family for sure.
I feel like the interior design bug just kind of traveled through all of you.
It did.
That's
Without a doubt.
amazing.
Yeah.
So when you got back to LA and you're there, then what?
So I was back in LA. That's when I started working for Chanel. I got married while I was at Chanel. I had my first baby while I was at Chanel. I had my second baby at Chanel. And then I was in sort of that young mom, busy life. And
Yeah,
but then we had a pandemic. So that
right.
happened. And then all of a sudden I had an 8 and 10-year-old and we were looking to move. And so that's landed me with this oak house.
Right. I
That's
love
landed me
that.
right here.
Are there any lessons that you've learned working in fashion that you've taken with you that you've applied to the house, or any nuggets that mentors have kind of instilled in you?
I worked under Glenda Bailey at Harper's Bazaar. She was wonderful. And I think it's important to just really stick to your gut, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that with her. I've noticed that with my mom. When my mom's making a movie, and I think my sister did this also, she has a sticker on her monitor that says, "Go with your gut."
Oh my God, I love that.
And so I always do that. And, I'll be in a meeting and we'll talk about something and I'll agree to it. And then I kind of get that feeling in my gut and I'll go home later and I'll send an email and say, I thought about that. It's not the right thing. I have a really strong relationship with my instinct and my gut. So that would be the thing I would say with fashion. I felt that when I worked there, you really have to go with your instinct. What you like will translate. And so
Yeah.
I've done that with interiors. I really go with what I think. I mean, this is my own home, so I just go with my instinct.
Yeah.
What will I like? How will I live in this world? What will it feel like? So I think go with your gut. That's the biggest lesson.
And that's a really important lesson because I think a lot of people get caught up. I don't really know what my style is. And here's 40 Pinterest photos that have no through line.
Yeah.
And they get kind of hung up on, I can't make sense of these photos that are all disparate and don't connect. And so I think being able to hone in on where your gut is actually taking you and listening to your intuition is so important in terms of just developing personal style.
Yeah. Is it the colors of the photo you love? Is it that
Right.
the furniture's all upholstered and it feels really like a soft place to land?
Yeah.
Trying to hone in on what is it that you love. And I'm really detail oriented.
I can tell.
I'm all in on what does the arm of the sofa look like and what will the fill be, and all of those things matter. It's all in the details.
It is. I feel like you've been super involved in the process from A to Z.
Yes, without a doubt.
Which is amazing. I think that's like what makes it go smoothly because the client is trusting their team, but also like it will feel like them because you've put in your 2 cents.
It's very collaborative, and I happen to be working with people who are open to that. But I was also clear with that about upfront. Like, I really want to be involved in this. I'm not the kind of person who wants to come home to like a makeover show reveal. Like, this is your home. Like, that just
No, you have to be
yeah,
involved in every little thing because it's you. I mean, it's almost like you're
exactly.
creating like a physical manifestation of you and your family. And
I think so.
it's one of the most beautiful things that I think families can do is build a house or renovate a house from scratch, because it's a physical kind of representation of where you are in your life and where you want to be in your life as you grow into the house.
It's amazing. I don't know that I'll ever be able to do this again. This is an amazing thing that we're doing right now.
I love it. As you draw closer to the finish line, which it seems like you are inching toward every day based on what we're seeing on Instagram, is there a room or a space that you're the most excited to use?
I would say the outside space. My current home has really little yard. And so
Yeah.
we're going to have, and that was a big reason why we ended up doing this, was that it has a beautiful backyard, which I actually haven't really shared yet on Instagram.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't seen it's probably all like excavated right now.
It's going to be pretty wonderful. And I'm looking very forward to being able to entertain in that space and be outside and read a book outside. I can't do anything like that now. So I think that's the thing I'm most excited about.
Oh my God, I can't wait to see.
Yeah.
You're like, me too.
And by the way, those were the words coming out of my mouth. Me too.
Is there any advice you think you could share with our listeners who might also, be embarking on a renovation process or thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, there's the cliche things like you need to, have a separate contingency budget and all of those things, which are true.
Mhm.
And you do need to have, I would say, be easy on yourself. There's a lot of decisions to make, and be honest with yourself and with your team about what you want to be involved in and what you don't want to be involved in. I know people who don't want to be involved in the minutia, and that's great. Just be
Yeah.
clear with that. So I think really think about how you want this process to go and how involved you want to be, how much time you have to give to it, and be clear with your team about that. And then, thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. I mean, it really is stressful. And
It
I
is.
think one of the reasons why I love all the content that you share is because it's so real. This thing happened today, and this is how we're talking about fixing it, but we don't have an answer yet. The downside of this whole HGTV world that we live in is no project goes that way.
No, absolutely not.
And so oftentimes when someone's working with a designer for the first time and they've never done it before, so they embark on this huge project thinking it's going to be like the most amazing thing ever, which it is. And it can be really stressful. And it usually is.
Absolutely. Both things can be true. And, the finish line is in sight. So I see that we will be on the other side of it. And I also remember when the house I currently live in, there were some things when I first moved in that I just couldn't stand, and they go away over time. Things,
So
you start to live in your space and enjoy your space. I am the opposite of don't sweat the small stuff. So I sweat it all, but I'm really enjoying it in a lot of ways. And it's great. I would just say be easy on yourself and ask questions. It's the best thing you can do. Ask a lot of questions.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you're almost, I mean, I know it doesn't feel that way, but you are kind of almost nearing the finish line. And I'm assuming you've got a lot of the decisions made at this point. So taking all that into consideration, what do you think your home says about you, or it will say soon?
Well, I live with 3 boys. And so I had to keep that really in mind. I mean, I hope my home I hope it feels welcoming. I hope it feels like a place that a family lives in. We're a young family. I hope that it feels inviting and warm to my kids' friends, because that was the kind of home I grew up in.
Yeah.
I had a really warm and cozy home that I loved very, very much. And so I hope that I can do that for my kids. We created a room between my kids' rooms that's like an upstairs boys' TV room where I
remember seeing that. Nice.
Yeah, it has one long wall, and I did a couch, a sofa that's going to run the whole span of it. And then, I'm trying to make it this real cozy boy space. And sometimes when I'm walking around, I can already kind of hear the voices of my kids running around. And
I love that.
I'm excited for that. That's what I hope my kids and their friends feel happy and excited to be in our home, and they don't spill anything.
Well, they will feel that, and they will spill things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's all about, really. Like that spaces like this. It's another thing that when we were talking to Gil, that was what he was talking about you're really creating like the movie set or the backdrop for the childhood memories for these kids that grow up in these houses. And that is such a privilege on our end as designers and architects, because what an amazing responsibility to kind of create that background for a memory that lasts a lifetime for people.
For sure. And I had that experience in my childhood home. So hopefully I can do the same.
I feel like even when your mom and your sister post about house related stuff or like set related stuff, and I know your mom doesn't like talking about interiors. I've listened to every podcast.
I don't think it's that she doesn't like to, well, I don't want to speak for her. She's so talented in that department. Well, she's talented in a lot of departments, but she is so talented in that department. And she has been she is my partner on this project. I mean, there's
I
not.
would imagine. I mean, there's not a single person in the world that's better than bouncing ideas off of.
Yeah, I have an in-house expert. I would be foolish not to use it. So I run everything by her. She knows every single inch of this house, and she's been amazing to work with on it. So she's wonderful at it, and I think her home and the interiors of the homes in her films are really something to be proud of. And she I don't know that it's that she doesn't want to talk about it. I think there's just, it's only a piece of the puzzle of her being a filmmaker.
Yeah. I mean, the way I think about the sets is they're like another foil to the story.
And they're so detailed. I mean, inside Jane Adler's kitchen, and it's complicated. The cookbooks were all the types of cookbooks a woman like her who's a chef would have, and she's also somebody, I mean, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in all the details, she's where I learned it. Details matter. And so the interiors of her sets feel like homes that these people live in, and they help tell the story of what kind of person they are.
And I think that's why the people who are true fans who watch over and over and over again, which is literally millions of people, like that's why everybody loves them so much, because it feels like you're going to a friend's house who you know.
Yeah.
Because it feels so familiar and they're so detailed.
Yeah, her sets have been, as a kid, I grew up going to them. And then as I got older and seeing they were able to make real homes on sound stages. I mean, it's remarkable. Well, movie making is magical.
It is magical.
It's complete magic, but it's great. It's really a special thing.
Where do you find inspiration? Like, do you have favorite social media accounts to follow? Do you go through old interior design books?
I would say I look to interior designers. I love the Roses, Rose Uniacke and Rose Tarlow. When I'm the Roses.
I love that.
When I'm looking for something, if I'm trying to figure out what's the right arm on this, or what should this look like, or I always go back to their images. The way they put rooms together, I think, is spectacular.
Yeah. I mean, they're just both equally so talented.
Oh, they're so talented. And I love their rooms and studying their rooms and dissecting them and seeing the colors they use. I find them both to be so inspirational. And then my saying is, what would Gil do?
Wait, I told him on the podcast, my saying is WWGD.
No, I could have it tattooed on me if I got tattoos. That I just reference his books. The amount of,
oh my God,
the pages
hysterical.
are falling out of his books because I reference them so much. I think he's a master. I think his work is so beautiful. And so I find a lot of inspiration in his work.
I am constantly blown away.
Me too.
By just everything, like how he sees the world and how he sees a space and how he can make that space so individual to who the homeowner is, but also like has that through line running through his work of like, you look at it and you immediately know it's him.
And also his range. I mean, the house, his own home in Maine, and some of these.
We talked about that.
Oh, that house is remarkable. And then these unbelievably gorgeous, elaborate estates he does. I mean, the talent is so enormous. So I look at his books constantly, and I find a lot of inspiration. And then, Instagram. I think Instagram is a great place. There's some homogenous work, and I try to weed through that. And I think that's like one of the downsides of Instagram, but the upside is there's beautiful work shared, and I love seeing it.
I agree. It's like there is the homogenous stuff, but then the upside of it is just so amazing.
It is.
You can meet, you make relationships with people on Instagram in the design community, at least.
And I try to answer every single person who DMs me. I communicate
I
with
love that.
everybody. I really make a time to do that because if somebody has a question, I want to be there to answer them. I think there really is a sense of community. And I have the nicest community. These people are in it with me.
I
It's
was
so
talking about
nice.
that with Mika Tenhov, who's wonderful writer and editor in the interiors world. She's also a stylist. And she actually also used to work at Vogue as the home editor. And we were talking about how the interiors world is just so nice.
So
everyone is
nice.
so nice, so collegial. Everybody wants to see everybody, for the most part. Everybody wants to see everybody. It's like the opposite of fashion, and it's so refreshing.
That's so nice. It's wonderful.
Okay, this is our last design question before we go into rapid fire, because we have our little rapid fire, which I ask everyone. Do you think that there's a design rule that you should always follow? And do you think there are ones that are made to be broken?
So I like the traditional design rules, right? Like I like to look at a room and see which is the longest direction. And I think the wood should run that way. I like the things that we know are tried and true. Like those rules I like to keep. So the answer is I like the traditional rules. I think there's a reason things work and I like to stick by that.
Yeah.
I think there's this idea that formal rooms should be formal that I personally, especially living here in California and with the young family that I have, that doesn't really work for me. I want my rooms to be livable. I don't, need a dining room to serve 18 people and be very formal. I want my spaces to feel comfortable. So I would say formal spaces don't have to be formal.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that says so much about where we are today in like modern decorating in general, right? There is no part of the home that should be an off limits room.
For sure.
And especially with young kids, every room should be lived in.
Definitely.
Every room should be, you shouldn't be afraid to drink red wine in your house.
I totally agree. And I don't like to break the rules that work. I don't love to play with scale. I don't think a tiny light fixture looks great on a big wall. I really like things to function well. And that's something I've learned by studying the Rose Tarlow books and Rose Uniacke's work and Gill's work. And they all have that through line.
Yeah, there's a through line of like classicism in all
for
of
sure.
them. And classic is classic for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
On that note, we're going to go into our little rapid fire, which I love asking these questions because I feel like they're totally unrelated to design, but they also like give you a little bit of like a sense of who people are.
Okay, great.
So what is your favorite food?
Sushi.
I love that. My daughter just started eating sushi this week, and my husband, I've like never seen my husband happy. He was like so proud of her.
I wish my kids would eat sushi. And my husband doesn't eat fish either. So
I don't eat fish.
Oh, you don't? Either
no, and so he like doesn't have anyone to enjoy it with. And so he was like so happy.
Anytime I'm eating with girlfriends, I basically insist we have sushi because I can't eat it with my kids or my husband.
Favorite drink? Drink
is water with ice and a lot of lemon. That's my all day, everyday drink.
You know what? I feel like it tracks for like your sense of it's like crisp and classic. You know what I mean? It's like a great white button down.
Totally, which I'm in at this moment.
Exactly. This might be a hard question for you.
Okay.
Favorite film?
My favorite film, I have a lot.
Yeah.
But the one I watch and love to rewatch is The Social Network.
That is so good.
It's so good.
Because it was from like the era that like we were growing up, it's like kind of seared into our brains.
Yeah.
And I feel like people that like Gen Z people like don't even know how good it is.
It's so good. The writing's so good. The music is amazing. I absolutely love that movie.
The writing is so good. And
the writing is so good.
Yeah. Favorite hotel, which I'm so curious.
I would say Il Pelicano.
Oh, I mean, that's like
it's pretty
dream
great.
Vacation spot.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Favorite city?
Jaipur, India.
That's so on my bucket list.
India's so great.
For people who love design, I feel like India and Morocco are like so high up there.
I think those are the best kinds of trips. I've taken that trip. I went to India and then I've also been to Morocco, and those kind of all day out in the markets, really fun trips are just the best.
I know. My biggest regret before I had kids was that I didn't do like enough exploring. And now I have
Yeah.
this huge bucket list of places that I want to go when my kids are like older, and I'm
So
just going to bring
fun.
them with me.
So fun.
I love this question for you because you kind of turned it into like a internet sensation overnight. Favorite bedding?
Land's End.
Or you heard it here, Lands End Bedding, which I was influenced and bought.
Yes.
And the backstory on that is really funny and like an extremely small world, is that Annie rented a house where she found that bedding, which is my best friend, who's like my sister, her sister-in-law's house.
It's so crazy.
Which is so crazy and random.
Such a small world, and it's the best.
Such a small world. And Jesse's like, talk about somebody who has amazing innate taste.
She really does.
That bedding is amazing. I highly recommend it. It's so soft.
It's my favorite.
Tea or coffee, and how do you take it?
Iced tea, only before 1 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Are you someone who can't have caffeine or else you're up all night? I'm
Totally.
the same way.
I have to cap it. I've had 2 today. That's it.
And you're
I'm
like
done.
triggering.
Yeah.
I think people who run anxious in general, it's like you can't, like I can't have more than like one large, and I'm an iced tea girl to begin with. I can't really have coffee. And so if I do overdo it on the tea, I'm tweaking.
Same. Same.
Favorite playlist?
So for the holidays, my sister has a playlist on Spotify, which I absolutely love.
It's really good. I cooked Thanksgiving to it this year.
Oh, it's so great. And then in general, I do like the Bossa Nova channel on Pandora or Spotify.
It's so good for like dinner parties.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
My new one that I've been into is Jazz in the Background on Spotify.
Oh, that's nice.
It's like very relaxing, and I started to dim the lights at dinner time because my older one has a hard time going to sleep lately. And we play Go Fish and we listen to jazz in the background.
So fun.
Favorite weekend activity?
A combo, some sort of rest. And then also my kids have lots of games on the weekend. So I love going to their games.
Yeah. The sports circuit is like overwhelming. Yeah.
But I also love a good nap. So a nap and a sports game.
You need it as a parent to get through a whole weekend.
For sure.
Our last rapid fire question is favorite design book, which I think I know the answer.
For sure. A Place to Call Home by Gil Sheyer.
Which is what my microphone is sitting on right now. I use it as my prop.
Or The Great American House, or the new one, which comes out in February. I think those are, if you're working on a traditional home in any sense, or any home, I couldn't recommend those books more.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, not only are they beautiful, but they're functional. Like they give really good advice.
Yeah. He's in the back of both books. There's all of his hardware sources and his favorite lighting sources. I reference those things all the time.
So do we. I keep them on my desk at all time. Like they don't leave my desk, honestly.
I know.
Well, this is like beyond a delight. I want to talk to you all day long.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really
I'm so
fun.
happy. I have like two final questions for you.
Yeah.
What can you share about the final steps of your renovation? Is there anything that's going on before you move in?
Yes. I mean, we have to get cabinetry and shower doors, and inside the closets. Our furniture's all in process. So
exciting.
That's being shipped and stored and being made, and fabrics are being ordered, and CFAs are coming. And so we're in the thick of that.
That's amazing.
I don't feel like I'm in the home stretch at all. Like not remotely. So that feeling
you're in the
hasn't
thick of it.
set in yet. Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm in the thick of it still. And I'm excited to live there one day. That still doesn't necessarily feel real.
Oh my God. I'm excited for you. I think we're all excited to like watch you move in. Like that's going to be the best part.
I should just set up like an Instagram live, like on my install days.
You should. People will tune in to like watch you unpack literally, because everyone's just so emotionally invested in the state of this house. Where can people find you? What do you like, is there anything going on more that you want to do with the Instagram account, do you think? Or is that?
I don't know yet. And that's the real answer. I think I'm just going to see where it goes and keep sharing and see what it evolves into. I never imagined I would be in this position. So I don't know. I'm sort of saying yes to a lot of things and opportunities and taking meetings, and
good.
I'm going to see what happens. I'm really enjoying it.
It's the modern day equivalent of being an editor.
Yeah. And I'm really having fun with it. So I'm just going to keep on moving forward.
Well, for our sake, please continue to say yes and please keep sharing.
Thank you.
We are so beyond thrilled to have you on today. And I am giving you a huge hug. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. Truly, this was so fun.
Oh my God, I'm so glad. I had so much fun. It's so great to get to chat with you. And like I said, everyone in our office, including myself, loves everything you're doing. So
thank you.
That's a wrap for this week's episode of Talk Shop. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with more thoughtful discussions and amazing guests. Make sure you follow on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify so you never miss an episode. And of course, follow me at Ariel Okin. See you next week.